Welcome to the On-Premise IT Roundtable podcast, the only show that dares to be both on topic and on location, or on-premise and on-premises, except during a global pandemic where we're joining you virtually. Each time we meet, we bring together a group of IT luminaries to discuss a single concept. In this episode, we're talking about something dear to my heart, and that's cloud storage, except that we're taking a little bit of a twist on it, as you're going to see. But before we begin, let's quickly meet who's on the panel today.
Hi, my name is Kumar Goswami. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Komprise.
Hi, my name is Arjan Timmerman. I'm a partner and analyst at Tech Unplugged. You can find me on Twitter at Arjan Tim.
Hi, my name is Rico Signoretti, and I work for Giga most of the time. I'm an IT analyst in data storage.
Hi, I'm Karen Lopez. I'm a data architect based in Toronto. I'm Data Chick on Twitter, and I blog at datamodel.com.
And I'm your host, Stephen Foskett. I am the organizer of Tech Field Day and the publisher of Gestalt IT, and you can find me on Twitter at sfoskett. So many of you know me as Mr. Storage. I'm a storage guy. I love storage. I've spent 20 years talking about data storage. And, we watched the growth of SAN versus NAS, and then content storage, and then object storage, and now cloud storage. There's all these wonderful storages that we can play with. But the problem is that enterprises have had some particular challenges in adopting cloud storage. Now, you'd think that it would be a slam dunk for them, but it really isn't, as we're going to hear. So again, the premise here is you, Mr. Enterprise, you can't afford to use cloud storage. Kumar, I'm going to start with you. What are the challenges that enterprises face in implementing cloud storage?
Well, I think it's interesting. Actually, cloud storage is easy to use. And I think that's what makes cloud storage what it is. It's elastic, it's agile, you can get it up and going really, really quickly. But the problem, and that actually is maybe its biggest problem. Before you know it, if you have on-premises shares and so forth, you got to go to an IT administrator and say, can you get me a share? Can you mount it? How does it work? And so forth. And there's this whole process, and there's a team that you go to make that happen. And typically that's not what's happening in the cloud. And once you have some permissions, you can just as readily create a brand new bucket and put all kinds of data in it. And that's what makes cloud great, but that's what also then comes back to haunt you in the sense that it can be very expensive because you're getting charged by the hour. It's pay as you go. And before you know it, you have massive data sprawl, huge amounts of data that you had no idea. And then you get a shock at the end of the month when you get that bill. And that's what I think is one of the aspects and issues that enterprises have to face, because they have a way in which they want to make, with accounting and budgets and so forth. How will they manage that budget if they don't have any control? And interestingly, and I'll end on this note, that Gartner was mentioning that 80% of the enterprises are going to exceed their cloud storage budget.
Well, my opinion is that most of the time we think about cloud because it's a swipe card away. I mean, it's easy to adopt, it's easy to do everything, but actually we don't take into account that the cloud billing models are very complicated. So most of the time I think it's an oversight by enterprises, and they are not really adopting the right methods to adopt cloud storage, because there is a process at the beginning, I think, where you have to select the right technology that you have, for example, on premises to take advantage of the cloud. I mean, it's not just the cloud, it's how you use it that makes the difference most of the time. And then you have to decide which kind of data you want to store in the cloud. I mean, of course, as you said, when you have everything that moves so quickly, like very active data, well, it can be expensive, especially if you access data from external clients. But actually, if you start thinking about how you're accessing data, which kind of provider you use, and so on, maybe there are many more options that can simplify the adoption. So that's my opinion. I mean, there is cloud and cloud, and there is way to adopt and, you know, a swipe card.
Yeah, I totally agree on what both of the other people said, but I think there is another thing as well. In traditional storage environments, there was always an administrator that was looking over everything that was going on the storage part, and he was looking over, okay, we've got this amount of storage, we need to make sure that it stays within boundaries, and if things go wrong, we need to adjust and we need to see what's going on. And like I think Kumar already mentioned it, with the cloud storage, it's way easier to put everything somewhere, and the oversight goes away on that part. So I totally agree on what the other people said. And I think, yeah, there's still a lot to do on how we're going to make sure that we see what's going on the cloud storage as well.
I think one of the interesting things that's come up just now is that, you know, even if I think about 5 years ago in the cloud, which is like a millisecond in IT time, right? The native storage options available by the cloud providers were pretty much, do you want blob? Do you want object? Do you want some weird niche thing? And now, even within the same cloud provider, there are so many options for the technology you'll use, how you will get the data into the cloud, how you can take it out, how you can connect to it, how you can govern it. I mean, it's weird to talk about the cloud model when it is changing every 3 months, whereas our on-prem storage options were generally de facto standards, even if we had a couple of them, because we couldn't afford to bring in every single type of storage technology.
I mean, from my point of view, Karen, you are totally right. Even if we think just the tiers that we have in a single service provider, there are so many tiers of the same storage. And if you are not, you know, if you don't have the right understanding of what you can get from these tiers, I mean, the very fast tier to manage fast transaction, even if in object storage now you can have all flash possibilities. And on the other side, you have storage for cold data. But actually, if you access it too often, it becomes untenable. So, I mean, are the enterprises informed enough about what they can do? Are they using, again, the right tools to position data properly? Because most of the time, I talk with our clients, and they actually are in a journey of adopting cloud, and they are not really well informed. I mean, for example, they think about AWS S3. This is S3, but do you know what S3 means? I mean, not just the API, not just the object store. I mean, there are so many interaction with other parts of the ecosystem. There are so many tiers. There are so many ways to use it. And S3, again, is an API. You can have it from so many providers out there. I mean, it's so complicated somehow. And I mean, service providers tend to simplify because they want to make it simple. I think the enterprises need to know more what they are doing with these tools.
I kind of a question for you then, Enrico. You say service providers tend to make it easy. Is that really what they do, or do they make a sort of curtain behind which behind it there's a lot going on just to lure in the customer and get the money out of it?
I actually think that, you know, coming back to Karen's point and Enrico's point, I'm not sure if they're necessarily luring, and maybe they are, but I think what they are trying to do is give you more and more options. I think that's where it really starts. And of course, they don't complete it. And if you really look at it, what happens is with that, you know, S3, as you were mentioning, Enrico, you've got S3, you've got S3IA, you've got S3 intelligent tier. You've got so many tiers, and you got to figure out, where do I put what? If you also notice in the case of cloud, you don't have a notion of access time. You only have modify time. right? And so if you have modified time, you might have created something 5 years ago, but you use it every nanosecond. It's hot. But as per the modified time or create time, it's cold and old, right? So therefore, the idea is in many cases, there's two things I think that are missing. One is the ability to understand and see how many buckets do I have across my accounts, my regions, what tiers are they in, how much is that costing me, and how much of it am I actually using and accessing. And I think those tools take time to make happen and to create, and it takes a lot of thought to be able to provide that and be able to slice and dice and say, hey, I only want to look at the buckets for this department or this owner. And so there's a lot of features there. And I think that's what's missing. And that's what we've been focusing on, especially, at Komprise, is how do I provide that value? So we actually have now solutions where you can, again, through policies, manage this thing based on access time, not modified time, and actually reduce those storage costs by 40 to 60%. And, and as Enrico was mentioning, if you make a mistake and you take something that's being accessed every minute and you stick it into, let's say, Glacier, or in the case of Azure, into Archive, and you have to keep bringing it up, oh my God, you'll not save money, you'll actually increase those costs. And that's why we've really focused on being able to look at how you're actually using that data and leveraging that to figure out where to put things. And that's where you can really get 40, 50, 60% cost savings.
I think it really comes down to the fact that essentially what we're dealing with here is, no offense, Amazon, but basically a dumb service. I mean, you essentially have a tool, and just like a hammer is not useful intrinsically, like you've got to use it for something. And the challenge, I think, with enterprises is that, in many cases, they really need advanced data services. In a way, I see it as sort of like the difference between like a JBOD and a storage array, right? The JBOD, technically it stores data, and technically, you could find one in the data center and stuff, but it's actually not all that useful without the storage controller that's doing all the cool stuff with it. Is that the way that other people see it?
Well, how I look at it actually is that in some ways they're really focused on providing you the greatest, variability, all sorts of different types of approaches at different costs with different speeds. And I think that's their current focus. And I actually think that when you begin to start focusing on managing, that changes the structure. I always find that storage providers who focus on performance or focus on capacity do a really good job. If on the other hand, they try to do that and management, I don't know if that necessarily works out well. And certainly in that case, there's certain immediate focus has to be on providing the different types of storage. So that's how I look at it. But yes, in the process, they have created an amazing, AWS, Azure, Google, they've provided an amazing storage environment. But you're right in the sense that now once I stick it in there, I have no idea the kind of data sprawl that I have, and I have no idea what my costs are going to be, from day to day. And so that's something that I think it needs to work on, and that's something that we've really focused on. So making the cloud, manageable. And again, another thing I want to bring up is that the rate at which the data is coming in and the way that the rate at which they're producing that data, any kind of manual intervention and manual management also doesn't work.
Well, I actually agree with you that we saw this trend, a few years back in the enterprise when we had, data silos everywhere, and we wanted to, starting a data management process on unstructured data. So where is my data? What we are doing with it. Now we saw a new concept of surfacing like orphaned data, dark data, these kind of things, and solution tackling this kind of challenges. And now we are moving to the cloud. Okay, we have the same kind of problem here. So everybody focused on the infrastructure, how to give you, the best tiers, the best solution. But actually nobody thought about, okay, we are going to store data here, and then, are we doing the right thing? So nobody was asking the right questions at the time. And now that we are starting to use these tools properly in terms of technically in the right way, now we are starting to see data growth and everything, and we have the same problems, okay? So both in the enterprise, in traditional storage infrastructure, and in the cloud, we need data management that makes sense. That gives you insights on what you're actually doing, which is not always the case. Even my traditional NAS vendor doesn't give me enough information on what I'm storing in the storage system. Okay, why should the cloud do better? I mean, that's a common problem across all the types of infrastructures.
I think, Enrico, you mentioned before, and what you're talking about now relates to me as a data person, as a type of governance and a type of data economics. So in traditional on-prem systems and storage, we had big upfront costs to choosing, implementing, and acquiring fairly significant capital costs. And now we're comparing it to a new world of fairly very few barriers to entry to provisioning. We're getting that elasticity and the scalability and all those things that we want, but we haven't all the times in enterprises updated our governance processes for that. And one of the reasons is sometimes the storage people don't get any say anymore because they're thought of as hardware or even software-defined hardware people. And now we've left it all up to the people who just want to move some data around. And that's the agility part. But enterprise management doesn't have normally insights into what's being put where, how often that data is used, when it's accessed, all the things that we've been talking about. Enterprises and teams struggle with it because they just don't have the right information or the processes in place to react to the cloud reality.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting point. And then coming back to what Stephen and Enrico were saying, you know, and which Karen, you kind of highlighted in terms of, are we getting the right data, right? And so when you think about a storage provider, to them, it's about how much of my storage are you using? You know, what are the IOPS? You know, what's working, you know, what's failed, what, you know, things of that sort. But really speaking, what we're asking for is, hey, how much data do I have on there? What am I using and what am I not using? Who owns that data? When did they last touch it? So it's not at the storage level, but at the data level, right? As we were talking about, data is the new oil. And so how do you focus on that? And that's really what we've been thinking in terms of is that, look, you know, that's fine. You have storage efficiency and so forth and so on. But ultimately, it's about the data and how do we better leverage that data? And so that's what we've been thinking about, you know, and actually another thing I want to bring up was that if you look at the trends, I mean, first of all, we should maybe also talk about COVID-19 and what that's doing to the trends. But the other thing that we're seeing now more and more at Komprise is that our customers are coming to us and saying, hey, look, we really want to be able to leverage the cloud, you know, in as transparent a fashion as possible. Can I, for example, instead of going to tape, for example, or managing, say, some on-premises object store, can I take my data that's on my fast, expensive NASes and tie that together and put it into the cloud in such a way that it doesn't disrupt anything that's going on? You know, you have no idea it's in the cloud. And that's a sort of a tenet that's behind Komprise that we've focused on. How do you create that transparency, store half the data in the cloud where it's cheaper, and maybe even take 25% of that data and stick it into an archive tier, which is frozen, which is still cheaper still, and yet make it look like all that data is on premise so that the hot data is what you're really paying for.
If I can get back to the premise here. So the premise is you can't afford to use cloud storage. And frankly, I thought that was hilarious because it's a double entendre, right? I mean, on the one hand, you're saying you can't afford financially to use cloud storage because, you know, the cost adds up and it becomes, you know, more and more expensive over time. On the other hand, you can't afford sort of liability-wise to use cloud storage or even just architecturally to use it because you know, it's just not compatible. It's not what you're looking at. I'm hearing both of those things from y'all. I mean, is the problem more financial or is it more architectural?
Both. Yeah, I think if you look at it from a financial point of view, it kind of depends on where do you want what. And it always comes back to, okay, if I'm going to do certain things, what will it cost if I do it on premises? And what will it cost if I do it in the cloud? I think you're seeing more and more companies tending to put a lot of data into the cloud because the ease of use. It's less expensive, so they will put it over there. But then when they really dive into it, they see that there's still a lot going on how am I going to manage it? How am I going to make sure that it stays on the storage where it needs to be when I need to get it quickly, or does something, can it take more time to get it back if I need it? So that's the financial part. The other part is that we're still in the process of going from the on-premises world into a hybrid and in cloud world. And I still think there's a lot to do there. And what Karen said about the administrators and the people that were really into making sure that the data was protected and managed and all that kind of stuff, they're not necessarily the experts right now on cloud storage, but I think they need to be taken into that process as well. And doing that means that you need to give them insights into what's going on premises as well as in the cloud.
I think one of the issues, Stephen, so you brought up, is it the financial aspects of can we afford to put data in the cloud, as well as architectural. And inside architectural, which is what I do, is I also worry about, data sovereignty. Is data going to the right places that it's allowed to go legally, as well as things like, is it protected? Are those the ways that we are putting it into the cloud? Are they actually protected according to the risks? The thing that I see happening a lot in enterprises is people don't understand the classification of the data. Does this contain financially sensitive data, health data, data with minors, all of those things? And a lot of people that are choosing cloud solutions are, let's say, overly measured and compensated for performance, as opposed to data protection of sensitive data and those things. I think that not having data classifications and optimizing for performance, when you put things into the cloud, it's not just your own data center that you know the answers to that too. And this is where I think both data architects and storage architects need to be working together, because while data architects like data performance and application performance, we generally love our data more than performance.
Well, to Karen's point, I mean, we said data is the new oil, but actually you can't do anything with oil if it's not properly refined, managed, and everything. So oil is a liability until you don't transform it somehow. So that's the only thing that counts. This implies that if you don't choose the right infrastructure, the right tank, or the right way to store it, you can only do damages with oil. So that's it. I mean, I hope it gives an idea.
Yep. No, I can't. That's very nicely put, Enrico. Exactly. Yeah. If you don't do the right thing with the oil, that makes a big fundamental change. And again, coming back to Karen's point, I think, again, this management solution needs to take into account classification, so that you can actually make determination, hey, this is, so for example, we provide classification and allow tagging as well. So therefore you can say, hey, this has this kind of information, let's take this to the Gov cloud versus, the cheaper non-Gov cloud, right? So here it's not it's not price performance. It's rather the focus is much more on, being correct from a compliance perspective. So absolutely, I would agree.
So just to sum up, can companies afford to use cloud storage? Obviously, it was a kind of a facetious line. I think the answer is yes, they can, as long as they are approaching it the right way. And I think that that's really the key. So thank you, everyone, for listening to the On-Premise IT Roundtable podcast. If you enjoyed this discussion, remember to subscribe, rate, and review the show in iTunes, since that does help our visibility. And you could also share the episode with your friends. This podcast is brought to you by GestaltIT.com, your host for IT coverage across the enterprise. For show notes and more episodes, go to GestaltIT.com/podcast. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.